along with those coastal impacts. So that's what awaits ahead. Let's just talk about what it's already done, right? We've shown you some of those visuals, and it's catastrophic when you look at Carriacou, because Carriacou took that historic landfall. They took the sheer fury of this, and you're looking at the verification of a Cat 4 storm that barreled through. And we're talking a top-end Cat 4. Let's take it back to landfall real quickly. Early July, July 1st, midday. It was right into the Carriacou Island. Actually, when it cleared out in the eye, you could see the island right in the middle of it. 150-mile-per-hour winds ripped through. That was a record. Strongest hurricane in June. And then we look at the strongest hurricane as it evolved since then. Because we take it back to Tuesday, and you look, 165-mile-per-hour winds. That's the strongest Atlantic hurricane we've ever had on record. But notice the trend since then, the harsh environment of the Caribbean slowly carving its way after this thing. And late on Wednesday night, we've seen this get down to 130 mile per hour, still a Cat 4 storm. When we look at this, these are some of those things that we will look back on in history. But right now, these are the impacts and the statements that are being felt from the Windward Islands into Jamaica, into the Cayman Islands, and many that await for these storms. When I think about Jamaica, I want to talk about a storm back in history. We look at Hurricane Dean. Look at the similarity to this. That track, Cat 4, southern side, but mid to late August. That's usually when these storms fire up, not early July. And when you look at the costliest storms and hurricanes that ever hit Jamaica, Dean, with that similar trajectory, cost the island $440 million. We're going to continue to get visuals from Jamaica. It's tough to get those visuals when it's bearing down on it because all the live feeds go out. And why it was so crucial to have Robert Ray there to tell the story of those in Jamaica. And so we're going to be looking at those updates with Fox Weather tomorrow and in the days to come, of course, with the forecast and what it's already done. By the way, we want to show you what Beryl looks like even this late into the evening time. Earlier in the day from Falmouth, Jamaica, you could see the resort starting to feel the wind impact. And it was very powerful throughout the day. The big question is, what's next? We'll answer that when we return. And welcome back. We continue to track Beryl in 2 locations that need to be prepared for potential impacts this weekend into early next week: Corpus Christi and Galveston, Texas. Yeah, we're going that far north on the Texas coast there because of the steering mechanisms and the potential here. Kiana and I are going to talk about the variables, right? A lot of what's happening right now, Kiana, sets the tone of what could happen in the days to come.
It certainly does. I mean, as this moves over parts of Jamaica, I think we'll have to watch whether or not it loses a little bit of that steam, or if once it gets into the Western Caribbean, it continues to feed off of those warm waters. So moving forward, as we take this into the weekend, we know that we're going to be watching at least the southern half of Texas for some impacts. If Beryl continues to be strong moving in around that high, it could take that pivot off towards the north. And we're going to be watching areas like Corpus Christi and the Gulf coastline. Yeah, this is those 2 options. The stronger system more likely to be pulled north, as you were mentioning. And that has been the history. We have to talk about the trend of Beryl. Yeah. It's outperformed every expectation. We talked about historic, unprecedented, but even with the new data that's coming in, every time the hurricane hunters fly in, it's almost astounding when you're like, wait, this thing's still going as a Cat 4? The spin has been impressive. Yeah. Watching it through this afternoon on the satellite, it even became a little bit more symmetrical than it was earlier in their day. So we'll have to watch and see whether or not it holds true over the Yucatan Peninsula. All of the spaghetti models are taking it right across parts of Mexico and into the southern Gulf of Mexico. Where it goes after that, I think that is still a big question mark, so I wouldn't put all of my bets just yet into Texas, but nonetheless, consensus does want to take it off towards the north. Yeah, I would say the spaghetti models are very confident through the Gulf, and it's this these last 2 barbs are their timeline. So this is Sunday PM, Monday AM. Those are the windows where now we start to get variability. Yeah. And as we get closer to that event, I think that's going to tighten up, of course. But yeah, the overall consensus is that it's going to lean to the north. And so these are all the different ensemble runs. These are all the options ahead, and why it shows you there's some concern because, yeah, we have a good spread right in here, but you can't rule out what's happening with this budge to the north. Exactly, and we still have options to go to the south a little bit too. So wouldn't let my guard down just yet. If you're in Texas, I would still prep. Maybe being prepared, preparation is key at this point, but we still are a couple of days out, and what happens over Jamaica is really going to make or break what happens in parts of the U.S. And by the way, when we say prep, this should already be in place. We're prepping here at Fox Weather, too. We have teams that are already getting deployed. They're booking their tickets to get to Texas. They're going to fine-tune their positions of where they're going to go based off of this. But here's the exclusive Fox model, and I will say it's bullish towards the northern side. But you brought up a great point when you and I were just talking about this. It's the structure of this as it moves through. I mean, I was expecting this over the Yucatan Peninsula to kind of lose that circulation, fall apart a bit. But you saw on the Fox model that that was not the case. Even moving off towards the north, if it decides to take this track, there is still some circulation in place, too. Will it be a Category 4 at this point in time? I doubt that. In that category either, but there's still some spin, which means the winds are going to be pretty impactful as this moves off into the Gulf Coast. And when you talk about this is Sunday evening, by the way. This is one ensemble run. We want to stress that, right? This is an option on the table. But when you watch this, you look at that onshore flow. I mean, we were just showing Galveston. We still have it behind me here, but you're looking at Galveston taking a direct hit with the onshore winds, driving that in. But even portions of like Beaumont to Lake Charles could get some of these outer bands. That's how far that this thing could progress to the north. It can't be ruled out. Now let's talk about more of the weekend impacts and just the rough surf. That's something when you're looking behind you. I mean, Corpus Christi, they love it, right? They're already out there, so they're kind of, you know, enjoying the early half of the holiday, but this is going to be on the way. So maybe you're going into the holiday weekend. Notice that we could see some significant waves that could lead to some dangerous rip currents. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it clear. I know that a lot of families are going to be out. That's a good point. Watch the children in the water. Yep. It's a great point. We're going to leave it with that because you never want to lose that line of sight. Make sure you're always locked in with those kids. Now, it's no secret that Hurricane Beryl is smashing records in the Atlantic, but what does that look like from inside the storm? Hurricane hunters have been flying directly into the storm to gather data that helps us better understand it. Earlier, we brought in commercial pilot Kathleen Banks to help give us some perspective on what it's like to fly into the storm.
As a pilot, what's your take on their experience with Beryl so far? Well, Ian, I knew even with the holiday, you would never miss an event like this. And these guys are really heroes. I mean, you know, they're trained for this, but I think also that people watching them should understand that, you know, these are really heroic missions they do. And it's very exciting what they do. And what I'm personally connected to this week is they are flying out of where I used to live, St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's kind of been their base. And there's really two teams. There's the NOAA team, and we know those planes. They've got the P3s with the fun names. They've got Miss Piggy. They've got Kermit. And then they've got a higher altitude jet called Gonzo. Then that second team is the Air Force Reserves out of Mississippi, out of Keesler Air Force Base, and they're flying those C-130s. So you've really got two teams. And what they're doing is they're launching out of St. Croix for the most part, now today out of Haiti to get closer to Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. And they go in and they fly these designated patterns called Delta pattern, Alpha pattern. And that's like a predetermined pattern throughout the hurricane. So you might think, well, they just pick the easy spots to get, you know, through a break of thunderstorms into that eye wall, but that's not true. They basically fly through every corner. They put a grid pattern over the circle of the hurricane. So very exciting stuff. You've got the jet up high, kind of out of the action, getting weather data. And then you've got those P3 Orions with NOAA right there down at like 10,000 feet, picking up, you know, they're dropping those tubes that have a little parachute on them, then they go down to the ocean. You've got the jet up high, about 10 minutes, and as they are going down, getting weather data, they're picking up all that information on the wind and the humidity, the temperature, that sort of thing. That's so vital in sending that data back to the NOAA computers.
That data is absolutely mission critical. It's life-saving data that they capture. Kathleen, I had the opportunity back in 17 to fly with the NOAA hurricane hunters into Dorian. It was still a major at the time. As a scientist, it was the best flight I was ever on. As a human being, it was the worst flight. But these things are really flying laboratories, and they're very much reinforced. So this isn't like flying an Airbus or a Boeing into these storms. Can you talk to that aspect of these aircraft being able to hold up to conditions like this?
Yeah, you've got the C-130s, and those have been around for decades. And those P3s, these P3 Orions actually go back to the early 60s. Their first mission was the Cuban Missile Crisis under the Kennedy administration, their first big mission. So these planes are beefed up, not as much as you'd think, perhaps. They do take some damage. They've had to get their radomes replaced. They've got special paint, you know, because they know they're going to encounter hail a lot. So they do require quite a bit of maintenance, especially when they get into like these hail shafts and that sort of thing. But part of it is also you've got specially trained pilots who definitely know how to fly in and out of this kind of weather, how to maintain what we call an aircraft's attitude. Instead of trying to maintain a particular airspeed or a particular altitude, you're trying to maintain an attitude and basically just ride those updrafts and downdrafts as they occur. So very, very exciting missions. You can certainly go on like FlightAware today, and you can watch the hurricane hunters. I'm just watching one right now. It's really exciting. You see this giant circle of no activity, and then just one or two of the hurricane hunters going in and out.
Yeah, you mentioned they are heroes, and a big shout out to the maintenance crew, too. I flew on Kermit. Miss Piggy was at the Aircraft Operations Center when I was there, and they were sanding down the props after a flight, exactly what you described. Took some serious damage, big dents in the props itself, so they were getting that airworthy once again as they used those two in tandem. It's always fascinating, and that's some wonderful context. Kathleen Bangs, great to speak with you. We'll have to catch back up, too, and talk more about travel for the 4th of July, because that's a different challenge over the next several days. Kathleen, thanks.
It's going to be a whole different challenge, exactly. Thanks, Ian.
All right, we got you covered with that whole different challenge. We'll take you to one of the areas here, Illinois, that has been dealing with severe weather. So if you're heading out the door for your holiday travel, trying to get to your final destinations, you will have to dodge a couple of these storms. We have Corey Gerken out and about tracking some of those storms as our exclusive Fox Weather Storm Tracker there in the upper Midwest. But we take you to the Midwest because that's where we're going to be watching storms kind of unfold today, really across the northern plains, back across the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley. Two areas where we have likely risk of severe storms. You're seeing some of those storms kind of pop off already, none of which are severe warned just yet, but this one, the nasty looking storm back towards parts of Nebraska. We have a couple of warnings and reports that have been coming out through earlier in the day. So now that we have a couple of these reports in, we'll talk about some of them. We had a fire chief report ground circulation, so possibly a tornado in some areas across parts of Nebraska. Out of Merritt Reservoir, we had emergency management pass on a report of a spot of a funnel cloud. So again, another opportunity of a rotating storm in the area through earlier today as well. This will slow you down whether you're driving or flying to your final destination. So as we get you prepared for the holiday tomorrow, here's a look at some of those airports that could see some delays. We take you from Minneapolis down through Des Moines into Kansas City. Delays are expected there. St. Louis may even see more cancellations than delays because of the storms that are going to be moving through and eventually over towards areas like Indianapolis. Now, the roadways are also going to be impacted by this too. We take you from tonight into tomorrow. If you're along, say, I-35, I-55, back towards I-90, these are two areas across the central and northern plains that will be dealing with some heavy rain, some thunderstorms. I said it earlier this week, check on the windshield wipers. I had an issue myself where my windshield wiper broke and we had heavy rain pouring in across the Northeast. Don't want you to go through that as we head through the next couple of days. By tomorrow evening, we're looking at a couple of areas back from Missouri into parts of Arkansas that could see storms that could be pretty severe as well. How much rain do we get out of this? Well, we take you through the end of the week. By Friday, a couple of pockets here, 1 to 2 inches over parts of Minneapolis, as well as back towards, say, St. Louis and into Louisville. Those areas that we were watching for severe storms as we went through Thursday could be suffering from some heavy rain as we head into Friday. Here's a look at your Independence Day forecast. A couple of storms, as I mentioned, for the upper Midwest and along the I-95 corridor. Now, Fox Weather is getting you ready for a jam-packed All-American weekend, whether you're hosting a backyard barbecue, heading to the main street for the parade, or taking in the fireworks. We've got you covered with your forecast for the 4th of July fun. Make sure you stay here for Fox Weather for your 4th of July holiday.
And we're going to have more here on Fox Weather. This is Corey Gerken in Illinois, and he's talking about those storms through the overnight hours into your 4th. More on the way. Stay with us.
Right on target, Steve. Oh man, that was a wallop right there.
Absolutely brutal conditions pounding Jamaica. That is Robert Ray. And notice the ebb and flow, right? He's going to that deep squat, lowering that center of gravity because he's taking hurricane force winds along with that salt water. It's like a pressure washer that just won't stop, and you don't know when it's going to hit. But it's been ongoing for hours now. We've watched the ebb and flow, but he's on the western side of the island, and they are taking the brunt of it. And this is expected to go throughout the overnight hours, and then this starts to move its way into the Western Caribbean, the Yucatan, and then back towards the Gulf. So it shows you the fury of Hurricane Beryl. By the way, coming into today, we were talking about Jamaica. It was going to get pounded, but there was two ingredients on its side. It had dry air and it had wind shear. And Beryl said, I'm not taking any of that. I'm going to continue with my full fury because even though he's in a balcony, that water is blitzing in horizontal. That speaks to the intensity of that wind. It's not falling down nice and easy. It's coming in hard. Look at Robert, by the way. You see his gear's a little bit different. He's got a helmet on right now. That speaks to the intensity. Let's bring him in and talk about what's going on. Fox weather correspondent Robert Ray is in Negril, Jamaica, and you see him jumping out of the way. Robert, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
But this is getting very volatile out there, and I can see you changed your attire there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Steve, it is. It's just darn right dangerous, and I have to say, this is a situation that, you don't want to be in, and the reason I'm out here showing this is to show how ferocious Category 4 outer bands actually can be. These have got to be 90-mile-an-hour gusts that are coming in. And that's why I've got one leg up, one leg down, ready to boogie if this gets too intense here. But this is the most intense scenario we've seen. I just went up to see Ben moments ago into the hotel room in the balcony where he's shooting from. And you can get a bird's eye view of some of the roofs that are starting to just peel because of the winds. Steve, I'm going to send this video in too at some point this evening or overnight. In the hallways of the hotel, the noise just appears like a witch is running through, screaming, and the pounding of doors and metal. And you don't even know where it's coming from. But that's what you're experiencing. Fences over there are being ripped. Tarps, trees being destroyed. I'm looking at a tree. Ben can't see this right now. But there's a tree on this property. It sits on a ridge. It is just torn apart. There are no leaves on it. Most of the branches are gone. And you know what else I want to point out to you? This is low tide. Can you imagine if this was high tide? It's just remarkable. And as I look up, I can see the clouds just crossing. And I'm always amazed at the twist. You really could see the dynamics and the architecture of a hurricane as it twists, the counter twist. This sucker is way 45, 50 miles off the southern coastline of Jamaica. I'm in the northwestern point. Think about what all of this energy has to do as it comes across those high hills and mountains. Yeah! Now that's got to be 90. That's got to be 90 miles an hour there. That just literally knocked me right off my feet. I'm 2 bills, and that just knocked me right off. 6'1", 2 bills, and goodbye. Thank God this is concrete, and my fingers were able to just kind of grab onto this. I tell you what, guys, I worry about these roadways on this great island of nearly 3 million people. I worry about the homes and the businesses that are built right up on the shore and the power lines that are not underground. And I worry about the coming days. And the Prime Minister has called for a state of emergency. Smart guy. I'm glad he did it. This island's going to need help. We're going to lose light here soon. And tomorrow, we're going to have a mess. And for the people who live here that are not lucky enough to be in a fortress like we are, a hotel with a generator, that I can't imagine. And if you have children or the elderly, I don't know how they're making it through this. I tell you what, Hurricane Beryl, get out of town and miss the Caymans. Gosh, just take it easy on the Yucatan. We've been called for this historic season, and it happened a lot faster than we thought. Yeah. Let's just all pray. And I'm not necessarily a religious man, but let's pray that the coming months are not like this, because this is hell on earth, especially if this is where you live. Steve?
Very poignant, Robert. You're talking about the brutal side of this storm. You're taking the absolute worst of Beryl right now. And I find myself bracing for impact just watching this, kind of getting in that mode when you're seeing this. We're going to send Robert off so he can get to safety right now. That's Fox weather correspondent Robert Ray in Negril, Jamaica, showing you the pure fury of a Category 4 storm and what's happening in Jamaica right now. And as we show you some of the visuals that are coming in out of this, you'll see the damage that's already been done from this powerful storm. I mean, this thing has been historic. It's been deadly, sadly. 7 people have been killed, and we've seen islands, the Grenadine Islands, leveled. We have 80 families that are displaced right now in shelters, over 800 homes deemed completely lost. So we're getting those visuals for you. It takes a while when you're talking about some remote islands. The question is, what happens next, right? And we look at the steering mechanism as it leaves the Western Caribbean, slams into the Yucatan. The question remains, what happens in the Gulf and what's the time frame? Well, this thing is verified as strong. It's fighting all the atmospheric conditions. If it's strong, it's going to get pulled into this jet stream. It's going to start budging to the north. That's an option. Why we've told everybody that's in Texas, along the Gulf Coast, be prepared. Here's the spaghetti plot. In agreement, then there's the consensus model. It's right at the border. That's the cone. But remember, it's the cone of confusion. The impacts happen well beyond that and well outside of that. What I want to show you is the ensemble run from here on out. This is every single option ahead. Notice the agreement towards the Yucatan on the eastern side. But then once you dip into the Bay of Campeche, there's a lot of options, and many of those do steer to the north. And then you have to think about the sheer size of these systems. Now, within those options, we have the exclusive Fox model. This one's a little more bullish on speed, but also northward movement. And when you're watching this, and as it pushes in, you're going to be looking by Sunday evening, now it's pushing in. And I will actually say at the latest Fox model run, because the models adjust every time we get new information and elements in. It's actually kind of leveled back towards the south. But you look at from Corpus Christi to Brownsville, South Padre Island, they have the rain that's coming in. But the onshore wind impact does go all the way up towards Galveston. And when you're looking at Sunday, on holiday weekend, a lot of people are going to be heading towards the Gulf Coast and the beaches, but it increases that rip current risk. We're looking at wave heights anywhere from 8 to 12 feet. Rip current risk, you've already lost 21 people this year, 2 of them in Texas. You can't let your guard down. Looking at the freshwater intrusion and rain, you're looking at easily over 8 inches of rain potential for Corpus Christi to Port Lavaca, and that's why we have a flash flood risk along with those coastal impacts. So that's what awaits ahead. Let's just talk about what it's already done, right? We've shown you some of those visuals, and it's catastrophic when you look at Carriacou, because Carriacou took that historic landfall. They took the sheer fury of this, and you're looking at the verification of a Cat 4 storm that barreled through, and we're talking a top-end Cat 4. Let's take it back to landfall real quickly. Early July 1st, midday. It was right into the Carriacou Island. Actually, when it cleared out in the eye, you could see the island right in the middle of it. 150-mile-per-hour winds ripped through. That was a record. strongest hurricane in June. And then we look at the strongest hurricane as it evolved since then. Because we take it back to Tuesday, and you look, 165-mile-per-hour winds. That's the strongest Atlantic hurricane we've ever had on record. But notice the trend since then, the harsh environment of the Caribbean slowly carving its way after this thing. And late on Wednesday night, we've seen this get down to 130 mile per hour, still a Cat 4 storm. When we look at this, these are some of those things that we will look back on in history. But right now, these are the impacts and the statements that are being felt from the Windward Islands into Jamaica, into the Cayman Islands, and many that await for these storms. When I think about Jamaica, I want to talk about a storm back in history. We look at Hurricane Dean. Look at the similarity to this. That track, Cat 4, southern side, but mid to late August. That's usually when these storms fire up, not early July. And when you look at the costliest storms and hurricanes that ever hit Jamaica, Dean, with that similar trajectory, cost the island $440 million. We're going to continue to get visuals from Jamaica. It's tough to get those visuals when it's bearing down on it because all the live feeds go out. And why it was so crucial to have Robert Ray there to tell the story of those in Jamaica. And so we're going to be looking at those updates with Fox Weather tomorrow and in the days to come, of course, with the forecast and what it's already done. By the way, we want to show you what Beryl looks like even this late into the evening time. Earlier in the day from Falmouth, Jamaica, you could see the resort starting to feel the wind impact. And it was very powerful throughout the day. The big question is, what's next? We'll answer that when we return. What?